Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for White and White Sense, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday, the 26th of July, 2024. Well, as I record this, the heavens have opened yet again and it is raining. Today is Thursday as I record this. I'm not quite sure what's happened to the sun. However, it is due to cheer up again for Monday next week, which is our open day here at Millbrook House. Monday is a chance for members to meet volunteers and vice versa, and of course staff will be on hand to help with any inquiries. Looking forward to seeing as many people as possible there on Monday, although if this doesn't happen there will be a lot of spare cake for us to eat. A final quick reminder that we do close for activities from next Friday after Striders and reopen again on Monday the 2nd of September for swimming. It doesn't mean the centre's shut, and it certainly doesn't mean we won't be answering the phone. It just gives the volunteers who run a lot of the activities a break in August. Finally, apologies, we know there has been a couple of issues with the Talking News on Alexa. However, these have now been resolved and you should be able to access them as normal. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Sight for White and White Sense.
Here is this week's charity news, week commencing 26th of July. Please remember you are all invited to our open day of celebration here at Millbrook House on Monday the 29th of July between 12:30pm and 3:30pm. We are inviting members, volunteers and supporters of the charity to all come together to see firsthand the incredibly positive effect our services have on people. Please do come along and bring family and friends, but please let us know for catering purposes.
There is no swimming this Monday due to the summer break. We will be resuming on the 2nd of September.
There is no yoga on Tuesday and will not resume until Tuesday, September the 3rd.
Our last weekly coffee and chat is on Wednesday at Millbrook House between 10 and 11:30. The cost is £2, which includes coffee and cake. Staff are always on hand to help with any inquiries and equipment will be available to try out.
Thursday is Mix and Mingle. This group meets between 10:30am and 2pm every week. Booking for this group is essential, and at the moment there is a waiting list for people to join. The July Stride is next Friday, the 2nd of August, when members will be catching a bus to Shorewell and striding back to Carisbrooke. If you'd like to join the walk of around 6 miles, please call the office.
All activities as normal will stop during August week, commencing the 5th. And will resume week commencing the 2nd of September.
On Saturday night we entered the Newport Carnival and pleased to say we're awarded 3rd prize in the community walking class. Everyone looked fantastic in their blue Sight for White t-shirt, smiling and waving to the crowds around the town centre. We would like to thank staff, volunteers and members who came along and took part.
The fortnight tennis held in Ryde is on Monday the 5th of August. This is held at the Ryde Mead Tennis Club behind Yelf's Hotel, starting at 9:30am to 10:30am. The club volunteers help with this club and are always on hand to offer help.
We are appealing for tombola prizes for our upcoming summer events. If you have anything you wish to donate, please do not hesitate to pop into Millbrook House, or alternatively, please call the office to arrange collection.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Plans for new Air Ambulance HQ get off the ground as green light given. Proposals to bring Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance's life-saving crew and charity staff under one roof near Southampton Airport which will result in a quicker response time to the Isle of Wight, were unanimously approved by Eastleigh planning officials on Tuesday. The charity is currently based at Thruxton in Andover, on the northwest edge of the county, a considerable distance from the majority of its missions. The move will put them at the heart of 70% of call-outs, allowing the teams to be refueled, restocked, and ready to respond to the next emergency call-out far quicker than from its current base. As well as cutting flight times, the new airbase is just 70 metres from the M27 and close to the M3, which will improve response times for the charity's vehicle fleet. The application was recommended for approval by the Eastleigh Local Area Committee, with input from Environmental Health, Southampton Airport, Civil Aviation Authority and Southampton City Council, among others. 371 comments were received, of which only 4 were objections to the Council's planning portal, in addition to the 612 comments made prior to the application via public consultation. Richard Corbett, CEO of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance, has said, "We're extremely pleased to have gained approval from Eastleigh Borough Council. We thank everyone who has provided input and feedback to our application, none more so than the swathe of people in our community who submitted overwhelmingly positive feedback, not just for this relocation, but for our service as a whole. This move will undoubtedly allow us to save more lives more regularly. Every decision we make as a charity is with the outcomes of our patients at its heart, and this move typifies that." The air ambulance now has several next steps, including agreeing operational plans with key partners. The site will require a purpose-built helipad, hangar doors, and a refit to the building's interior.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Steam Railway names first Chief Executive. The Isle of Wight Steam Railway has announced the appointment of Mark Morgan Hughes as its Chief Executive. The newly created role follows the trustees' recognition that the successful, award-winning railway has reached another chapter in its 53-year development, with significant opportunities ahead to further develop and strengthen the railway as an educational charity, visitor attraction and substantial volunteering provider. The Chief Executive role will have a broader focus and a more strategic remit than the previous role of General Manager that it replaces. Mark has previously held a number of senior positions within the transport industry, and until last year was Commercial Director with First South West Limited, responsible for commercial, contract, school and leisure bus and coach services across the southwest. He became a director / trustee of the Steam Railway in 2021, but stood down in December 2023 to take on the role of interim general manager following the departure of the then General Manager Steve Backhouse. Chairman of the Steam Railway, Peter Taylor, said, "Following Steve's departure, the board has been evaluating how the railway should be managed for the future. With an anticipated turnover in excess of £3 million this year and visitor numbers of 130,000, we are a major tourist attraction and one of the leading heritage railways in the country. We need a management structure and business plan to secure the future of the railway for at least the next 25 to 30 years. We have concluded that this is best achieved by the railway being headed up by a chief executive rather than a general manager. Mark Morgan Hughes said, "It is a privilege to be able to lead the Isle of Wight Steam Railway as it continues its remarkable journey. 53 years since the dedicated founder members and volunteers achieved the creation of the railway on part of the Ride to Newport line, which celebrates its 150th anniversary next year. With an amazing community of around 500 volunteers, 3,000 members and 130,000 visitors a year, the railway is an important part of island life. We owe it to all of them to secure the railway for the future."
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Yarmouth Bridge to be closed for 2 months to enable deck replacement. Island Roads will undertake a major project to replace the entire deck of Yarmouth Bridge in the autumn, with the main road between Yarmouth and Freshwater to be closed for around 2 months. It will be the first time the deck has been replaced in its entirety since 2009. The work is planned to begin on the 23rd of September and last up to 8 weeks, during which the structure will be closed to road traffic, with the usual diversion via Wilmingham Lane and Middle Road in place. Pedestrian access will be maintained throughout the work. Cyclists, too, will still be able to use the bridge during work as long as they dismount. And Island Roads is also working with the Harbour Commission to minimise disruption to river traffic. The work has been planned for outside the main holiday season to minimise inconvenience, but also at a time of year when there is a reasonable chance of mild weather, which is helpful to the performance of some of the materials being used. Nathaniel Saunders, project manager, has said, "Though we are doing the work out of season, it is nevertheless inevitable that there will be some inconvenience to river and road users, so we would like to thank them in advance for their understanding. It is important that the bridge is kept in good order, and the complete replacement of the deck should reduce the need for maintenance-related closures in the future." At 90 metres long, Yarmouth Bridge is the island's second largest bridge. It is a 7-span structure comprising steel main beams with composite timber decking.
This is Alison reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio entitled "Cowes Students Deliver Enterprising Ideas." Students at Cowes Enterprise have been awarded a £2,000 cheque for their ideas to improve well-being, coordinated by the Wellbeing Mentors as part of the #BeWell project. Students came up with the idea to improve a sense of connection and well-being at the school. Wellbeing Warriors, or Mentors, are an appointed wellbeing committee which meets weekly to consider students' mental health and wellbeing priorities. Wellbeing Warriors have since come together independently of staff to produce the winning action plan. Over 22,000 young people across Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Portsmouth and Southampton, known as HIPS, in years 8 and 10, took part in the Be Well project in autumn 2023. Cowes Enterprise were one of 103 schools which took part in the HIPS area, of which 19 were special schools. 9 schools across the island were involved, 2 of which were special schools. Over 1,400 young people. The inspiration behind the students' concept was an interest in Owen Eastwood's work on belonging. They have adopted his model of Waka Papa, creating environments where individuals feel connected to each other, their community and their history. The Wellbeing Warriors team are thrilled to have been awarded this cheque, and the prize money will go towards making their plans a reality, with the money being spent on guest speaker and resources for the festival, the cost of 20 hoodies, materials for the club, furniture and decoration of the sensory room, and the cost of mental health first aid training. The project was judged by groups of similar age students, and the panel said that the Cows Enterprise team concept was the best, and they loved the idea of having a whole school celebration for well-being. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education, said, "It's wonderful to see so many of our young people engaged in this issue. The fact that this project was focused on reaching out and being visible to those who are vulnerable and need help is wonderful. The idea of children supporting children gives great hope for the future, and I look forward to seeing plans put into action in the coming school year." Ashley Whitaker, Strategic Director for Children's Services, added, "The #BeWell project has produced some really interesting information, and we have collected a lot of useful feedback and data from the students. This will help us as a local authority and also teachers to continue to grow and work alongside the children." A summary of the survey results. The results of the survey were split into neighbourhood level. The HIPS, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, Southampton region has been split into 46 neighbourhoods. The Isle of Wight made up 4 of these: Cowes, Newport/West Wight, Ryde and Shanklin/Sandown. The neighbourhood dashboard can be accessed online. Overall well-being across HIPS, key life satisfaction and mental well-being scores seem consistent with other large studies that have used one or more of the measures included in the #BeWell survey. Island young people are not discernibly different to the average. However, young people in our area have shown a marginally lower score for self-esteem compared to the HIPS average. The #BeWell survey provides data on a range of domains and drivers linked to well-being. Overall, a slightly higher proportion of young people on the Isle of Wight report feeling lonely often or always. 11.5% of island young people have told the project they attribute high rates of loneliness to being isolated on an island, but this issue is also recognisable at the regional level. They attribute general loneliness among young people on the island to social media, not having enough local free activities at the weekends, people not wanting to do things after school because they can't be bothered to travel somewhere else after school, school is draining. Once home, young people start scrolling on social media. This fuels comparisons and discontentment with their own lives and loneliness. When it comes to talking about mental health across HIPS, when asked if they feel comfortable talking to adults about their mental health, 29.5% agree they do feel comfortable. For the island, this is lower in the Cowes area at 24% and highest in the Ryde area at 33%. When asked about feeling safe, Isle of Wight young people rate higher than the HIPS average of 84.2%, with 86% reporting that they feel fairly safe or very safe in their local area. This varies across neighbourhoods. Ryde at 88%, Newport and West Wight 87%, Sandown and Shanklin 85.4%, and Cowes 84.5%. The #BeWell programme is currently funded for 3 years, and using the findings, collaborative work such as that evidenced by Cowes Enterprise College will continue between the local authority, community partners, schools and students to improve well-being.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council computers find new home via schools in Africa. Hundreds of redundant Isle of Wight Council laptops will be given a new life building digital literacy in some of the world's poorest communities. The Council has partnered with the Turing Trust, the Edinburgh-based IT and educational charity which refurbishes old tech to give to rural schools and academic institutions in Africa. So far, the Council has donated 330 Lenovo computers, which will be reconditioned at the Trust specialist workshops. After all devices complete a rigorous data destruction process, the Trust loads educational software and then distributes the equipment to schools and charities both in the UK and overseas, which would otherwise be unable to afford IT equipment. It is estimated that the Council's donation will bring computing and IT education to around 5,940 students, while the recycling of the equipment will also benefit the environment, offsetting around 92 tonnes of CO2 emissions, which is the equivalent of planting 23 trees. The energy savings created are also enough to power 23 homes for an entire year. Roger Brown, the Council's Strategic Manager for ICT and Digital Services, said, "This is not the first time the Council has helped charities by providing them with our old equipment, such as Sight for Wight, but it is the most significant provision by size. We chose the Turing Trust because of their incredible work to bridge the digital divide in Africa. We were inspired by their mission to provide education and training opportunities to underprivileged communities. These partnerships ensure the computers we donate will be put to good use and make a real difference in people's lives. We are also impressed by their focus on sustainability, which ensures that the technology we provide will be functional for as long as possible. We estimate that another 200 laptops may also be appropriate for handover in the future. Critically, for young people, IT skills open career opportunities and make university more accessible. Since some of the charity's partner schools have started teaching IT, they've seen 20% more of their students attending university. IT skills can also have an important economic impact too. On average, those with IT skills can increase their incomes by 39%. Councillor Karen Lucioni, the Cabinet Lead for ICT, said, "We're excited to be part of the positive change that the Turing Trust is creating, and we believe that our donation will have a meaningful impact on the communities they serve. The demand for refurbished computers is so high that even the hundreds of units we're donating is a drop in the ocean. So we hope other organisations are encouraged to work with the Trust so their redundant equipment can be reused securely with such lasting and valuable impact." The Turing Trust was set up by the family of the late Alan Turing, who was famed as a mathematician and computer scientist, and his work on breaking the German Enigma codes in the Second World War. Earlier this year, through the Council's contract with mobile phone provider HMD Global, that's Nokia, around 3,250 trees were planted at Candraini, Madagascar, as part of the company's Let's Plant Together scheme.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. CrossFit members to take on 60,000 burpees challenge for Mountbatten. Members of Ride's CrossFit Incursion will be taking on the challenge of completing 60,000 burpees in aid of Mountbatten Isle of Wight next month. On Saturday, the 3rd of August, from 9:30, around 70 people will take to the beach at Apley to raise much-needed funds for the local hospice. It is hoped that over £1,000 can be raised with a Just Giving page established to collect donations. Camilla Barton, co-owner of CrossFit Incursion, has said, 60,000 burpees is a lot of burpees to complete, even as a team of around 70 people, and some people will have 1,000 to do. So please come down and cheer us all on that morning and bring family and friends.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Children's ward at St Mary's given makeover, thanks to local charity. The children's ward at St Mary's Hospital has been brought to life with new vibrant artwork, thanks to a local children's charity. The new artwork has been funded by Layla's Trust, a local charity that supports recently bereaved families and helps families who have children with life-limiting disabilities and terminal illnesses. Walls in the ward are now filled with colour and interest and create a brighter and more child-focused environment for young people and their families. Becky Hepworth, Children's Ward matron, said, "Our wish was for our paediatric ward to be a much more child-friendly environment, and we are thrilled with the artwork that Layla's Trust has so generously provided. Every aspect has been carefully thought through, from making sure it appeals to different ages and the story it tells, to the location where it can be easily seen and produced in a way that it can be refreshed if it becomes worn. I want to thank everyone for helping us transform our ward. It's just wonderful." Artist Greg Stobbs came up with several designs that would appeal to young people, and it was the Isle of Wight NHS Youth Forum that had the casting vote. The chosen artwork runs the length of the ward and tells a story of growth. Using nature as a central theme, the illustrations aim to create a vibrant but still relaxing environment where young people and their visitors can be distracted and transported through character, narrative and imagery to a place that feels less daunting. Greg Stobbs said, "Nature is proven to reduce stress and improve mood, so I wanted to bring an element of that into the hospital. Little seeds growing into vibrant, semi-abstract flowers, trees and natural forms. Characters that are unique to the hospital, that can be followed and recognised as familiar, friendly faces throughout the different spaces." It was a huge honour to be asked by Layla's Trust to create the imagery for the hospital, and a massive responsibility to create work that would be embraced by the young patients. I'm so glad that it was them that had the final say. Emma Cotter from Layla's Trust said, "Anyone who is or who has been in hospital alongside a poorly child for any length of time will know and appreciate the impact that the hospital environment can have on your mental well-being and that of a child. Having met Greg at Art College over 20 years ago, we instantly appreciated that his skills as a talented artist and illustrator would make a great addition to the newly renovated ward. The ward is now a riot of colour that doesn't just appeal to younger children, but is relevant to older children as well, which is no mean feat. Hopefully, children will find the spaces friendlier and less clinical, allowing caregivers to use art as a tool to help children engage with storytelling and creative therapy. The Trust would also like to thank GQG Services, who offered their services in surveying the ward, and the NHS Printing Department for the printing and installation of the artwork.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled Jet Skier Who Caused Red Funnel Ferry to Take Evasive Action Handed Caution. A jet skier who forced the Red Funnel Ferry to take evasive action after steering across its path has become the first to be cautioned by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCA, under a new water safety law. The offence was committed by a man in his 20s from Southampton at the entrance to Cowes Harbour on the 4th of August 2023, after he circled directly across the ferry's path within metres of its bow. His actions prompted the ferry's master to make significant changes to steerage and power to reduce the risk of a collision. The incident was spotted by officers from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, with the case being taken by the MCA, which issued a caution to the man on the 1st of July 2024 after he admitted the offence. Leslie Hopker, MCA Departmental Inspector, says, "The jet skier was very remorseful and appreciated that his actions had forced a ferry, with many people on board, to essentially slam on the brakes. At a busy harbour on the last day of Cowes Week, this could have had serious consequences. It's a timely reminder that even small watercraft are now covered by maritime law, and action will be taken against those breaking the rules. The actions of the jet skier were in breach of Rule 9 of the International Regulations for the Prevention of Collision at Sea, IRPCS, contrary to Section 4 of the Merchant Shipping, Distress Signals and Prevention of Collisions Regulations 1996. Since the 31st of March last year, the law has also applied to jet skiers under the Merchant Shipping Watercraft Order 2023, which enables those who endanger others by using powered watercraft of any size in a dangerous manner to be prosecuted. Island Echo reported on this change in law last year.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Heroic actions that saved life of one leisure swimmer recognised. Dedicated staff at One Leisure Medina have been honoured for their heroic actions in saving the life of a swimmer who suffered a cardiac arrest. Duty manager Terry Hardy and leisure attendant Sean Joyce acted swiftly when they spotted Louise Harris face down in the shallow end of the main pool on the 7th of June. The quick-thinking pair pulled her from the water and brought her poolside, where they fought for more than 40 minutes to restart her heart and keep her alive. Luckily, Nicola Nuttall, a midwife and resuscitation specialist from St Mary's Hospital, happened to be in the pool at the time and joined them in performing CPR and using the on-site defibrillator. Eventually, Louise regained consciousness and was airlifted to Queen Alexandra Hospital, Portsmouth, where she underwent surgery. Louise, a regular swimmer at Medina, said, "If it wasn't for their quick actions, I wouldn't be here today. If this had happened anywhere else, I may not have been so lucky. I'm just incredibly grateful for everything they did. Last Friday, she returned to the pool to thank staff personally for all they did and to congratulate them on receiving a special recognition award from Wendy Pereira, Chief Executive of the Isle of Wight Council. Addressing her rescuers, Louise said, "It sounds weird to be even saying it, but 6 weeks ago I had a cardiac arrest in this pool. You're all so skilled, all that training and theory you put into practice, and you saved my life, all of you. Then I was airlifted to Portsmouth, had surgery. Honestly, all the things that went right for me that day, just amazing. I owe it all to you guys. I couldn't have picked a better place to have a cardiac arrest." Graham, Louise's husband, also expressed his heartfelt gratitude, saying, "The quick thinking and reactions of the One Leisure staff without doubt saved Louise's life. They gave my wife 40 minutes of CPR on the poolside when I'm sure a less committed or less professional team would have given up with the obvious result. We would like a special mention for the immediate resuscitation team of Terry, Sean and honorary team member Nicola, who had her Friday swim rudely interrupted but didn't hesitate to help. And a heartfelt thanks from both of us to you all for your brilliant and life-saving assistance." Terry and Sean received support from leisure attendants Jade McLaughlin, Craig Warren and Ash House, who are on poolside standby, ready to assist with CPR and promptly contacted emergency services. Asked what was going through his mind at the time, Terry, who's worked for One Leisure for over 25 years, said, "The training just kicked in. Initially, it was hard to recognise what Lou was going through, but fortunately, I had the support of Nicola, who was brilliant, and we worked together as a team really well. All the other One Leisure team members did what they had to do, got the ambulance here and the DFib, supported us all the way. It was a really good team effort." Nicola said, "We worked really well as a team. There was that communication without having to communicate, and that's what you need in those situations. Terry was absolutely phenomenal. Good teamwork." Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, Cabinet member responsible for leisure centres, added, "Our staff acted quickly and professionally to administer first aid until the air ambulance took the swimmer to hospital. Incidents like this don't happen very often, but when they do, our highly trained One Leisure staff know exactly what to do. On this occasion, their swift action was crucial in saving a customer's life."
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Dentistry focus for Island MP Joe's first House of Commons speech. Isle of Wight East MP Joe Robertson has spoken in the House of Commons chamber for the first time. He chose his moment to speak from the green benches during oral questions to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting. Called by the Speaker during questions on NHS dentistry, Joe Robertson said, "As the Right Honourable Gentleman is aware, there is a particular shortage of NHS dentists in coastal and rural communities, like in constituencies such as mine on the Isle of Wight. Will he therefore today commit to the previous government's plan for 240 golden hellos for newly qualified dentists by the end of the year to address this issue?" Mr. Streeting welcomed Mr. Robertson to the House of Commons and replied, "Mr. Speaker, he is absolutely right to touch on the workforce issues in NHS dentistry, and absolutely right that we need to incentivise dentists on two fronts. Firstly, to commit to the NHS and do more work in the NHS, and there's a range of things we are looking at in that regard. But also to make sure that we get new dentists to the areas where they are most needed, and we will certainly support incentives to that effect. Joe said afterwards that he welcomed the commitment to incentivising NHS dentistry. He said that he would be pressing the case for the East White with the government, not just for more NHS dentists, but GPs and social care workers too. Before entering Parliament, Joe worked for Dementia UK and their national Admiral Nurses programme.
This is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Food on the Move initiative receives £20,000 grant to support islanders. The Isle of Wight Community Rail Partnership has been successful for another substantial grant of £20,000 to support its Food on the Move initiative. Now in its fourth year, the total raised by the initiative for this vital community support is nearly £400,000. The grant from the Household Support Fund from Isle of Wight Council means the weekly food provision will support vulnerable families and individuals for another 20 weeks, and in the worst time of year for people struggling in the summer holidays and in the run-up to Christmas. The Community Rail Partnership works closely with the island's housing associations, adult social services, charities, Hampshire Police and other local organisations. Ali Smith from the Gaslight Cafe at Sandown Railway Station, closed since the pandemic, is able to help with volunteers for parcel pickups or deliveries. Food on the Move started in March 2020 as the world went into lockdown and has helped support thousands of families and those in need with fresh and non-perishable groceries, whether it's for a few weeks or longer term. Community Rail Manager for the Isle of Wight Community Rail Partnership, CRP, Bobby Locke, said, "This is a project that has gone from strength to strength, with first the pandemic and people losing their jobs, to the now exponential rise in the cost of living, and the impact this is causing on families and individuals. It is sad in this day and age that our communities have to rely on food banks and this sort of support, but we are delighted that, with all of our funders, we have been able to do so." Funding has come from South Western Railway, Whitelink, Southern Vectis, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation, the National Lottery, White Aid, Isle of Wight Council, Connect for Communities and the Household Support Fund.
This is Alison reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio entitled World War II Spitfire Makes Unplanned Touchdown at Sandown Airport. Visitors to Sandown last Friday, July the 19th, may have spotted a World War II Spitfire making an unplanned stop at the town's airport. The British single-seat fighter aircraft made its emergency landing after suffering engine issues. The plane subsequently made a safe landing at Sandown Airport and was taken to a hangar for repairs to get underway over the weekend. The aircraft took off again on Sunday morning.
We now have the news items and sport read by myself, John.
And Mary.
Enough is enough. Protest at housing plan heats up, by County Press reporter. More than 100 campaigners gathered in Bembridge on Sunday in protest over plans for a major housing development. A greenfield site is earmarked for Captiva Homes Middleton, a 130-home development, previously described as one of the biggest the village has ever seen. The location, on land off the corner of Mill Road and the High Street, was identified as suitable for housing by the Isle of Wight Council in 2018. Captiva believes if the land is to be developed, it should be done by an island house builder such as itself. High-profile names including Sally, Lady Grylls, mother of TV star Bear Grylls, were among those who turned out in protest at the scheme. Lady Grylls, who has lived in the village for over 50 years, told the county press, "In that time I have seen an increase dramatically in the volume of traffic, and it's just totally inappropriate to be building more and more expensive houses on green fields." Meanwhile, TV actor and comedian Marek Larwood, who lives in Bembridge and grew up and went to school on the island, said, "Bembridge would no longer be a village. It makes me feel really depressed because once it's gone forever." Resident and professional driver Martin Woodward, who is part of campaign group Build a Better Bembridge, said flooding and traffic were among his main concerns. He also claims housing would not be affordable as advertised. The council should be on the side of the community, not the developers, he said. As part of a separate development, 56 homes are currently being built on the corner of Stane Road and Hillway Road, and Martin fears adding even more properties would, quote, destroy Bembridge, unquote. It hasn't got the infrastructure to take it, he said, arguing that more people would put already stretched GP surgeries under more pressure. He also said that proposals contravene the Bembridge Neighbourhood Development Plan, BNDP, which recognises some development is inevitable, but should be of small scale, and ideally not on greenfield land. The plans are set to go before the Council's Planning Committee on July 30th.
Residents oppose new drone scheme taking off. An impassioned meeting of around 60 Cowes residents took place on Wednesday evening to discuss the imminent closure of the Mornington Road car park for a 6-month trial of drone deliveries to and from the island. Local householders voiced numerous concerns about the proposals, which were first introduced at a stakeholder meeting in April. Many residents who live near the car park complained they were not informed about that initial meeting, which was supposed to involve local stakeholders, including residents. During the April meeting, it was promised that further consultation would take place before any decisions were made. However, the next communication residents received was a letter from the Isle of Wight Council last Wednesday, informing them that the car park would be closed from August the 7th to February the 7th next year to facilitate the trial and accommodate a shipping container. During Wednesday's meeting at the Villa Rosse Hotel, which overlooks Mornington Road, residents raised numerous issues. These included the loss of parking spaces during the summer, the reduction of green space and public amenities, potential negative effects on wildlife, the lack of consultation with the town council, and the unsuitability of the site. Concerns were also expressed that proper procedures for closing a public car park had not been followed, and that due diligence had not been conducted on the drone supplier Inteliport. Maggie Ankers, owner of the Villa Rosse, noted that no one at the meeting supported the plans. She said, "There is a significant groundswell of opinion against this. People are angry about losing the only green space on Cowes seafront, and these parking spaces being taken away just before summer events like the Powerboat Festival. The car park is heavily used by beachgoers and as overflow parking for regattas and other events. It shows that nobody has thought this through. She added, "People are very angry that our public representatives don't prioritise local residents and businesses before moving forward with such plans." The Isle of Wight Council was approached for a comment, but had not responded by the time we went to press.
Owner blamed in boat crash ruling by Oliver Dyer. A vessel which crashed and led to the rescue of 14 people off the Needles was being driven by its owner, who was insufficiently qualified, the Marine Accident Investigation Branch, MAIB, has ruled. A qualified skipper was at the helm of the Channel Queen, but they disembarked the vessel for a kayak before it grounded, handing controls to owner and renowned swimmer Chloe McGardle. The boat crashed after hitting the submerged wreckage of another ship, Varvasi, on July 20th, 2023. In findings released yesterday, Thursday, the MAIB warned the outcome could have been much more serious, and had protocols been followed correctly, the accident could have been avoided. The investigation found there was no charted navigational passage plan in place, and effective use was not being made of the available navigation equipment to execute a safe passage. The boat was escorting a relay swim event around the island when it hit the Varvasi. The Channel Queen was then deliberately beached in nearby Scratchell's Bay. The passengers and crew abandoned ship to its rigid inflatable boat and a life raft, and were then transferred to an RNLI lifeboat. Some passengers suffered minor injuries, which were tended to locally, the report said, and Channel Queen was subsequently declared a total loss. As well as owning Channel Queen, Chloe McGardle is a world record-holding swimmer, and was the sole proprietor of the company that managed the swim event Swim On. An MAIB investigation concluded the skipper and Miss McGardle prioritised the swim event over the safe navigation of the vessel. The skipper, disembarking to the kayak, had become a normalised procedure during previous swim support events, the report said. Both Miss McGardle and the skipper had overlooked the requirement for the vessel to always remain under the command of an appropriately qualified crew member when underway, according to the MAIB. Chief Inspector of Marine Accidents Andrew Moll said, "Once the hull of Channel Queen was holed, it was fortunate that the boat was beached before it could sink, which gave the occupants time to disembark safely. In only slightly different circumstances, the outcome could have been much more serious. The 4 stages of passage planning, appraisal, planning, execution and monitoring, are well tried and tested. Had they been followed, particularly as Channel Queen was operating very close inshore, the accident could have been avoided. The report recommends that any vessel the company operates or engages from a third party to support its event is crewed by sufficient numbers of personnel who are suitably qualified. It has also been recommended that the company reviews the method of navigation passage planning used on board any vessel it operates."
Man denies smuggling drugs cache in his anus. A man failed in his attempt to smuggle drugs onto the Isle of Wight festival site by hiding a tube containing a variety of them up his bottom, an island court was told. Joseph Bradshaw of High Street, Wootton, admitted to 3 charges of drugs possession, namely amphetamine, MDMA and cannabis in Newport on June the 21st, when he appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. At around 5:50 p.m. that day, Bradshaw entered the festival site at Seacoast Park and passed a drugs dog whose behaviour alerted a security officer who witnessed the 46-year-old had removed a cylindrical item from his anus, said Lauren Stone, prosecuting. Police on site, alerted to the discovery, checked the item, which contained 4 grams of cannabis, 3 grams of amphetamine, or speed, and a bag that contained several MDMA ecstasy pills. Bradshaw was subsequently arrested, and the police followed up the arrest that day by conducting a search of Bradshaw's home address, where they found, separated into multiple containers, cannabis of varied degrees of strength. In 2010, Bradshaw was convicted of possessing drugs with intent to supply and was handed an 8-month suspended jail term. For Bradshaw, Jim Osborne said his client disputed removing the drugs from his anus, claiming he withdrew it from his trousers. Bradshaw was bailed to reappear for sentencing at the same venue on September the 20th.
Music makes a return to Robin Hill. A music festival is coming to the former Isle of Wight attraction, Robin Hill Country Park, later this year, it has been announced. Warrior Festival, which has previously been held at Smallbrook Stadium and Sandown Airport, will blast tunes out of Robin Hill this September, organisers say. Usually held on one day, the 2024 festival will take place over 2, September 21st to 22nd, with the lineup featuring a host of UK tribute and local bands. Robin Hill has previously hosted Eclectica and Bestival music festivals. Tribute bands of Queen, Nirvana, Tom Jones, Arctic Monkeys, Foo Fighters, Muse, Weezer, Tom Petty and Bryan Adams will feature. Meanwhile, Island talents include Dirty Little Secret, the Spamiotis Band, Forever to Go, Jay Eatwell, Blonde Bombshell, the Average Height Band, the OMS and Better Late. The music festival helps raise funds for island charity, the White Brainy Bunch. The sale of Robin Hill is ongoing and not yet finalised, but the county press understands the sale could be completed imminently. In February, a company named Robin Hill Partnership Limited was incorporated with local business owner Lee Priddle as its director, according to Companies House. Vectis Ventures, the current owner of the site, has been contacted for a statement.
Long road back for business. Businesses in Shanklin Old Village, which felt the knock-on effect of the Leeson Road closure, say they are relieved it has reopened, as it means trade can finally return to normal. However, they have rued the impact misleading signage had on them and feel it could have been avoided. The landslide near Bonchurch on December the 10th last year led to the closure of the main Ventnor to Shanklin route. The road, to the joy of Ventnor residents, reopened to a fanfare on Tuesday last week, July the 16th. As the Isle of Wight Council shut Leeson Road, it also effectively closed off the route to the other end at the top of Shanklin High Street. When it closed, Old Village business owners almost immediately felt isolated. Angry, the council and Island Roads had placed road signs simply saying "Road closed," with nothing to inform they were open as usual. It became almost like a ghost town, with very few cars passing through and starved of any passing trade. Businesses complain the closure sign should have been erected further up towards Cowley's Hill. After some intense lobbying by local businesses, Island Roads eventually placed new signage at the top of the high street to address their grievances. Michelle Suggett, who has run Crafty Days Arts and Crafts Shop just off Church Road in the Old Village for the past 12 years, said business literally died when the road closed, but things are now looking up with more people about. Her comments were echoed by shop assistant Caitlin Caldwell, a neighbouring Jocklish which sells local handmade goods. Since the road reopened, things have got better and I hope for it to be very busy from now on, she said. Another good thing is that as I travel by bus, I have a more direct route home now. Lynn Thompson, who works at iconic thatched gift shop and cafe, Pencil Cottage, said the road closure saw slower business. There is more traffic and more people around now, Lynn said. It feels like the old village is getting back to normal. Kavanagh and Baker, which sells Isle of Wight produce and gifts, certainly felt the effects of the closure. Manager Claire Hunt said, "The sign should have said it was business as usual from day one. It has hit small businesses and was the last thing we needed. But the reopening of the route has seen more people on the road and we have definitely picked up." Meanwhile, tea rooms in the old village managed to remain busy despite the road closure. Patricia Wybrow, who owns the Grade 2 listed Old Thatch Tea Shop, said, "Although we remained quite busy during the closure, the signage gave the wrong impression and impacted on everybody's business."
Isle of Wight meat products recalled in safety scare. An Isle of Wight meat company has recalled several products due to hygiene and legislative concerns making them unsafe to eat, the Food Standards Agency FSA has said. The Isle of Wight Meat Company, based out of Cheverton Farm, has recalled 4 biltong products. This includes the company's biltong original, biltong sweet chili, biltong garlic and biltong black pepper. All packs, batches and best before date codes up to and including May 2025 are being recalled. Biltong is a form of dried, cured meat that originates from southern African countries. The FSA said the products have not been prepared in line with food hygiene and legislative requirements, making them unsafe to eat. If you have bought any of these products, do not eat them. Instead, take a photograph of the packets, destroy them, and email orders at chevertonfarm.co.uk with the photo for a full refund. For more information, contact the Isle of Wight Meat Company on 01983 741 234.
Dream comes true for Ewan. An Isle of Wight boy recovering after surgery for a brain tumour saw his wish of meeting 2 YouTube stars whose videos helped him get through treatment granted. Ewan Reeve was just 8 years old when, out of the blue in August 2022, he was rushed to Southampton General Hospital after an MRI revealed the diagnosis. Just 3 weeks after his initial symptoms, Ewan underwent surgery to remove the tumour. Ewan began a 7-week course of intense radiotherapy in London, followed by 4 blocks of high-dose chemotherapy in Southampton. Ewan's diagnosis not only separated him from his brother and dad, but it also robbed him of his basic skills. Ewan's mum, Stephanie, said, after his surgery, he had lost most of his mobility on his right side, so he had to learn how to eat, walk and write again. There was one thing that allowed Ewan to connect with his brother while in hospital, and that was catching up on Slogo and Jelly's latest YouTube videos. When he came round from the operation, he could barely talk, but asked to watch their videos, his mum said. We were in hospital for 4.5 months, completely isolated from the outside world. We had to create our own comfort, and Slogo and Jelly were it. Ewan's family found out that they were eligible to have a wish granted by Make-A-Wish, and Ewan, now 10, asked to meet Slogo and Jelly. During their time together, Slogo, Jelly and Ewan played Minecraft, built a mansion with the Minecraft pros and battled some zombies. Even Ewan's brother Finley, also a fan of the gaming duo, were able to have a play. Having gone through so much, he was quite shy, but he was chatting to Slogo and Jelly so much, he was so confident, Stephanie said. For her, the highlight of the wish was seeing him so happy. It's all you want as a parent, she said. More than 63,000 children in the UK, like Ewan, have been diagnosed with a critical condition and are eligible for a wish. Through its campaign, Wish 200 Week charity, Make-A-Wish UK is bringing together gamers, content creators and the games industry to help grant 200 wishes for critically ill children across the country.
Beach Boardwalk Open by Zach Saunders. Accessibility features at Ryde Beach were officially unveiled at an opening ceremony on Wednesday. The milestone event marked a step forward in ensuring that everyone, regardless of mobility challenges, can enjoy the beautiful 5-mile stretch. Born from heartfelt feedback from wheelchair users, Ryde Town Council, RTC, researched ways of making the location more accessible. Considering Ryde's unique shifting sands, the decision was made to implement a 200-metre boardwalk, handcrafted by Nashers, a dedicated men's shed group in Seaview, with help from young people at Network Ryde. In addition to the boardwalk, a range of equipment has been introduced to make beach strolls and dips in the sea accessible to everyone. The collection includes beach and sea wheelchairs, a sand rollator, and equipment provided by the lifeguards, all of which are available free of charge through an online booking system. A major upgrade accompanying these provisions is the seasonal Changing Places unit, found near the existing toilet facilities at Eastern Gardens. The facility has a ceiling hoist, changing bench, shower and accessible amenities. At the opening event, RTC Projects Officer Annette Johansson-Steed, who spearheaded the campaign, thanked stakeholders and sponsors. Speaking to the county press, Annette said that beach accessibility was one of the first projects she started when starting her role 2 years ago. Now that it is done, Annette says it is an amazing feeling, adding that she has just been cruising on a high. The project raised £47,000 in funding, which included £10,000 from Sporting England, £5,000 from Diametric, £5,000 from Visit Isle of Wight, a £5,000 anonymous donation, and £27,000 raised via the public crowdfunder. Speakers at the event included Will Miles from Visit Isle of Wight and Neil Chapman from Hover Travel, who said the project sets us apart from other locations in the UK, making us stand out. Jan Brooks from the island-based accessibility charity Isle of Access also made a speech about how her team had been campaigning for an accessible beach on the islands since 2016. Ryde Mayor Richard May and High Sheriff Graham Biss were on hand to cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony.
Film studio plans still alive. Plans for a film and TV production studio on the Isle of Wight are still alive and negotiations are continuing, the Isle of Wight Council insists, almost 2 years after they were first unveiled. A meeting of the Council's Corporate Scrutiny Committee heard that proposals are moving forward just slowly. Questions were asked about the progress of plans to sell the Council-owned land, known as Kingston Marine Park in East Cowes, to Medina Studios. A decision to sell the site was approved by the council in November 2022, but has not yet gone through. The Scrutiny Committee requested an update at a meeting this month. The councillor in charge of Culture and Leisure, Julie Jones-Evans, said negotiations are progressing. She said she will provide another update in September, adding, "I'm trying to get this over the line." The council hopes final terms will be agreed and contracts exchanged imminently. Duncan Heath, David Godfrey and Neil Blewett, who all have experience in the film and TV sectors, are behind the proposal for the site off Saunders Way. In early 2023, the Hollywood writers and actors strikes shut down the industry for almost a year and progress was delayed. The council hopes Medina Studios will submit a planning application this summer.
Piers Swim turns 70 by Oliver Dyer. More than 150 swimmers made a splash-off for the return of this year's Isle of Wight peer-to-peer swim. Hosted by the Isle of Wight Marlins Masters Swim Club, the 70th event on Saturday saw participants go from Sandown Pier to the site of the old Shanklin Pier. At noon, 157 swimmers, with over 50 from the island, entered the water and swam across the 1.8 miles of the bay. The fastest male swimmer was Benjamin van der Helstraat, Seaclose SC, in 32.5 minutes, while the fastest female was Kitty Craig in 35.8 minutes. In the 15 to 17 year juniors was Harry Shepherd, 33.55 minutes, and Isabel Muncaster, 34.15 minutes, both of Seaclose SC. In the category, Benjamin was the fastest island male and Abigail Lacey, Seaclose SC, the fastest island woman in 37.21. The last swimmer in was the 81-year-old Jenny Ball, Ride SC, in 1 hour, 3 minutes 27 seconds. There was a large crowd to see the start and the finish, where they were entertained by Fat Samba as the swimmers came in. The trophies were presented by the island's European and British 200-metre butterfly down syndrome swimming champion, Zach Lacey. The 71st swim will take place on August the 9th, 2025.
Ofsted praise for Island Primary in latest inspection. Shelfleet Primary School in the West Wight has again retained its good status following an Ofsted inspection. Ofsted spent 2 days assessing the school last month, praising Shelfleet on many aspects of its performance since their previous report in 2018. It was also Shelfleet's second upgraded inspection since Ofsted judged the school to be good 10 years ago. The new report highlights how the school has developed an ambitious curriculum that helps prepare pupils for their next stages of learning. However, while most pupils receive a strong, broad curriculum, inspectors found some minor inconsistencies in its implementation due to some learning activities not always being well matched to pupils' needs. This has resulted in some pupils finding work too hard or are not challenged enough in class, which affects their progress. The school, with a complement of 190 pupils, is led by Lizzie Granger, head teacher. Staff get to know pupils well in order to meet their needs and have high expectations of pupils in both learning and behaviour, the report said. Ofsted said the village school has a strong commitment to inclusion. The children enjoy and benefit from a variety of visits, clubs and activities, with staff considering each pupil's cultural experiences and aiming to offer personalised opportunities for those who are disadvantaged. We have come so far because of our teachers, a Year 6 pupil told an inspector. Ofsted said the child had summed up the warm and welcoming ethos that pervades throughout the school. Governors and staff are united by the school's vision across the school and federation, the report adds. The inspection also highlighted that staff feel valued and are proud to work at the school, with the good quality of provision appreciated by many parents. One parent told an inspector, "The school, teachers and everyone are brilliant and I can't fault them. My son loves going to school. I am always recommending others to send their children to Shelfley."
Setback for new Commerce and Leisure Park Scheme by Oliver Dyer. Fresh proposals for a major new commercial and leisure park on land next to the Isle of Wight Airport are back before planners. However, an application seeking outline permission to build Sandown Employment Park is recommended for refusal. Mr. T. Fowler of Island Airports wants to construct 12 commercial units / buildings with space for 246 car parking spots between Scotchell's Brook Lane and Newport Road, Apps Heath. It is suggested that the scheme would provide 500 jobs. Initial plans were refused in October 2018. Among the reasons given were a lack of information on the impact on traffic, inadequate footway links and pedestrian crossings, and the development being detrimental to the rural character of the area. It is proposed that access to the park would be gained from a spur road off Newport Road. This would form a staggered junction with the existing Honor and Jeffrey Garden Centre on the opposite side of the road. Original plans sought to relocate the bus stop, but the revised application proposes a new concrete standing area for the existing bus stop near the entrance to Scotchell's Brook Lane. This would also include a widened footpath to the existing eastbound bus stop. To date, the application has 22 letters of objection and 23 letters in support. Among those to object to the plan is Paul Brading, Isle of Wight Councillor for Lake South. Although the development would result in job creation, planning officers say it would not be considered a sustainable form of development. They say the application fails to adequately provide suitable access and the provision of pedestrian connectivity to the east. Planning documents state, in addition, the density and height of the proposed buildings and excessive amount of hard surfacing would harm the character of the area, and therefore officers consider that the application should be refused planning permission. A final decision on plans, which can be viewed on the Council's planning portal by searching 19/01205/OUT, is due to be made by councillors on July 30th. Go to publicnoticeportal.uk to find details of Isle of Wight planning applications and other public notices near you via a clickable and searchable interactive map. Public notices this week appear on page 62 of the County Press.
Firefighters saved my baby's life. A mother has thanked firefighters who came to her aid when her 1-year-old daughter was struggling to breathe in her car seat last year. Tammy Mahoney from Ryde was sitting in the back of a relative's car when her daughter Elisa suddenly became ill, appeared to be choking, then started gasping for air and became unresponsive. Acting fast, the car was pulled over and Tammy called 999 for help. Help came from Greenwatch at Ryde Fire Station, who respond to cardiac arrest calls to support the Isle of Wight ambulance service. At the scene, the crew cleared Elisa's airways with their immediate medical response equipment and thankfully, Elisa took a big breath for herself before receiving care for a seizure from the ambulance service. The emotional reunion took place when Green Watch visited Elisa, now 2, at her preschool for a planned Meet the Fire Service visit on July the 17th. Tammy said, "It was very emotional seeing the crew again. It felt heartbreaking and amazing to see my daughter with firefighter Bex, who I handed Elisa over to that day. I hugged Bex tight and just didn't want to let her go. I know for a fact that if the crew hadn't turned up when they did and did what they did, Elisa wouldn't be here today. We want to share our stories so more people are aware that the fire service can help with these types of medical emergencies before an ambulance arrives, especially when minutes save lives. My partner and I will be forever grateful to the crew." Greenwatch Ride said, "When we arrived at Elisa's preschool and saw her walk towards us holding her mum and dad's hand, we couldn't help but feel emotional, knowing full well how different the outcome could have been. We feel so proud as a team because of our quick interventions. Elisa is here today, healthy, thriving at preschool and laughing with her friends." Louise Walker, Isle of Wight Ambulance Services Head of Education and Community Response, said the timely response and effective care undoubtedly contributed to the positive outcome.
Charity calls for bins in men's toilets. Men need bins in toilets too, an Island charity says. The Isle of Wight Prostate Cancer Support Group is campaigning for public toilets to have bins in the men's cubicles as well as women's, and has met with a fair bit of initial success. It is not only prostate cancer that causes some men to become incontinent, but the group knows firsthand that some men have given up going out because of a lack of facilities. The group says a bin in toilets would give them somewhere to change themselves. It added, "There is a law that states there must be a bin in every ladies' loo for personal problems. Where is the law that states we should be treated the same?" The group is contacting all town and parish councils to ask for support, but they would also like businesses to come on board too. The following councils already have men's bins: East Cowes, Godshill, Gurnard, Knighton, Shanklin, Totland, Wootton and Yarmouth. A petition can be signed by emailing the smiths57@btinternet.com for details. The group stock pads in the hub in Newport, where men can go and get them without having to wait for one's order or on prescription.
White memories and nostalgia. 200-year-old hotel is steeped in history. A popular hotel is celebrating its 200th anniversary with style over the next 3 months. Hollier's Hotel on Church Road in Shanklin is running a series of themed weekends to mark the big occasion, depicting different periods in the building's history. Through to September, its staff are donning all manner of costumes and guests are invited to take part in the celebrations with an ever-changing, period-appropriate nibble at the bar, the first being Eve's pudding. This weekend, gifts can tuck into Victoria sponge cake and other nibbles on the horizon include parsnip cake, carrot cake, coronation chicken, pineapple and cheese on sticks, cocktail sausages, turkey Twizzlers and birthday cake. Hollier's Hotel was built in 1824 by a gentleman called William Williamson, who named it William's Inn after himself. It was the first hotel in the Bay, Sandown, Lake and Shanklin, and during its first year, a local newspaper reported that the hotel had done well and served nearly 50 coaches. However, back then, a coach meant a horse-drawn carriage, so not too many guests.
The following year, the paper reported that the hotel was going from strength to strength. serving just over 100 coaches. Sometime toward the end of the 1800s, the hotel was bought by the Hollier family, and they decided to change the name. It is reported that at that time the family name was spelt Hollier, Hollyer. They sent away for new signage, and when it arrived, all was not well. Their name was misspelt, the Y replaced with an I. It is believed the family decided to change their name because it was the cheapest option. The family also had a daughter who at the time was considered to have been very well travelled because she'd been to London. It is said she returned from a trip to the capital city and demanded the thatched roof be ripped off and replaced with the new thing she had seen, tiles. The roof was shiny and different, so people came from miles around to see it, a far cry from today, where thatch is a symbol of wealth rather than poverty.
A 125 years ago, in July 1899, a terrible disaster occurred in the Solent when the starboard engine on torpedo destroyer HMS Bullfinch exploded, killing 8 men and injuring several others. The vessel had completed a series of trials and was running at high speed towards Cowes when the explosion occurred. Volumes of steam filled the engine room, terribly scalding the occupants, 8 of whom died. A children's wing at the Royal Isle of Wight Infirmary and County Hospital was set up to commemorate Queen Victoria's long reign. Charles Dennis of Ventnor appeared in Ryde Court charged with swearing at the top of his voice for half an hour. His voice could be heard some 60 yards away from his house, and he continued swearing until he was exhausted and was taken to bed. He was fined 7 and 6pence, £371 2p, and 8 shillings, 40p costs. A huge fire broke out at Messrs. Sibbick & Co. in Cowes. So furious were the flames that in a short space of time the fire had covered a large extent of the ground, and the blaze lit up surrounding buildings and masts.
Stop. I'm not sure which is. 100 years ago, in July 1924, Camp Hill convict George Jones, 45, of London, was working in a party of prisoners, building officers' quarters, when he got away unnoticed and escaped into Parkhurst Forest. A hole was found cut in high barbed wire fence, and he concealed himself in the forest until nightfall. A search overnight proved fruitless until traces of the prisoner were found in the Osborne district, where a cottage had been entered. Jones was finally recaptured 30 hours after escaping.
75 years ago, in July 1949, around £15,000 was needed to repair and reinstate Victoria Pier in Cowes, Cowes Council members heard. The committee approved the scheme in principle, although some members felt more money would be needed to complete the work.
50 years ago, in July 1974, Fairley was favoured as the location for the island's 5th largest high school, and other locations were effectively dismissed by the County Education Committee. Early morning singing by a Camp Hill prisoner nicknamed Elvis Presley annoyed other inmates so much that they attacked him, Winchester Crown Court heard. An attacker was given a further 9-month sentence. A defendant at Newport Guildhall made a dash for freedom and tried to leap over a 16-foot-high balcony after being sentenced to 30 days in prison. Officials foiled the escape attempt by clinging to the man. Hover Travel unveiled a new £1 million hovercraft to provide faster service on its ride to South Sea route. Plans to create a medieval theme village in the centre of Newport rested on a rankle over car parking spaces.
Dear Editor of the Mainland Press, by Matthew Chatfield. After reading an epistle from an irate mainlander, I was moved to send the following letter to the editor of the Mainland Press. Sir, my childhood was marked by many happy trips to your larger island for holidays and family occasions. Since then, I have been a regular visitor to the mainland and delighted in the attractions you have put in place to entertain tourists such as myself. But after my recent visit, I'm thinking it might be my last vacation overseas. I thought I'd firstly express surprise at the high ferry prices, as if nobody ever mentions that. Because obviously you can sort that out if you choose to. You can't always blame the corkheads. Those ferries go two ways, you know. As for buses and trains, I admit to a profound disappointment. In your cities, admittedly, it's great. Those underground trains are comfortingly familiar. But once you get into vaguely rural territory, you can forget it. If Southern Vectors can run £2 buses all day between most island towns, then why can't you? And the price of your train tickets. Honestly, I think you should get some advice from the Isle of Wight Steam Railway on how to run a successful rail service. Speaking of transport, have you guys ever taken a road trip that didn't involve a traffic jam? Or looking for a parking space for hours? Frankly, if we have to wait 10 minutes in a tailback, we will be on the blower to island roads. But on your island, congestion seems to be just accepted. You should try spending less time queuing in traffic. You might like it. I was also disappointed that many features of my childhood visits are no longer there. I used to love stopping at the Little Chef or Happy Eater. Is it true that you can't feed the pigeons in Trafalgar Square anymore? What happened to Debenhams and C&A and Jamie's Italian? At least you've still got a few Wimpeys hidden away. To be honest, I prefer our little streets of independent shops. I don't think the whole chain store thing is working out for you. Have you thought about getting rid of them? I can see you're putting a lot of effort into clearing your place up, but my goodness, you need to. The graffiti and litter on your North Island is another level compared to ours. I was disappointed to see the vast derelict areas blighting your cities, such as the shipyards of the Tyne and Portsmouth. Our handful of intermittently smouldering hotels seems inconsequential in comparison. Surely your local authorities can put some unemployed folk to work tidying up. Finally, I must mention the standard of moaning from your mainlanders. When I read a missive from some disgruntled overner, I'm dissatisfied by the lack of scope and imagination. Pull yourselves together, and when you visit our island, the home of champion whingers, read the Isle of Wight County Press letters page and learn to grouse like professionals.
And now a public information item, an article by Joe Robertson, newly elected MP for Isle of Wight East. It is 3 weeks since I was elected Member of Parliament for Isle of Wight East. It is a great honour and privilege to represent my home. I have wasted no time in trying to tackle some of the biggest issues facing our island. I met with the Secretary of State for Transport, Louise Haigh, to talk about ferry services. I am pushing the government to intervene by regulating prices and ensuring a minimum service obligation. We do not need a lengthy investigation by the Competition Markets Authority, CMA. There is no guarantee the CMA would find technical unfair practices, but the government should still act and has the power to do so. There is likely to be an integrated rail network bill later this year, which will complete Labour's nationalisation of the railways, and this presents a perfect opportunity to include ferry regulation. It would make no sense to have a nationalised integrated rail network with unregulated private companies running ferries in between. On Tuesday, I spoke for the first time in the House of Commons by asking the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care what action he would be taking to incentivise newly qualified dentists to deliver NHS appointments in coastal and rural communities like the island. Although Mr. Streeting stopped short of making a specific commitment, he confirmed he would be using incentives to get new dentists to areas where they are needed most. I will be pressing the East Whites case, not just for dentists but for GPs and social care workers, drawing on my own experience of working with a health charity for over 6 years. The Isle of Wight Council is consulting over primary school closures due to the oversupply of school places, which is placing financial pressure on schools. I met with the Council Cabinet member and director responsible to ensure decisions are made only after full consultation with schools and parents, and are based on fair, objective criteria. I have taken up my seat on Ryde Town Board to help finalise the strategy for distributing £20 million over the next 7 to 10 years. I want to see a mix of smaller projects which can be delivered quickly, together with some more ambitious plans. Reopening the splash pool and renovating the boating lake could be delivered relatively quickly. I also want to see new CCTV technology in the town centre, which can be connected to the police control room and monitored in real time. I will be setting up my new constituency office over the summer. However, I can be contacted on joerobertson.mp@parliament.uk.
Letters by S. Milton from Ryde. Please just leave my cat alone. My cat keeps disappearing for maybe 2 days, then she comes back quite upset. I think someone is feeding her and keeping her indoors. I live in the Barfield / George Street area of Ryde, and I just want to say please don't feed my cat. She has a health condition and I feed her very well. And please don't keep her indoors. That's unkind, and I have put anti-flea treatment on her. So, dear neighbour, please leave her alone.
Keep an eye on Lake Development, a letter from Penelope Baker of Lake. A major development application started pre-2019 is to be decided by Council on July 30th. Now called Commercial and Leisure, the proposal is based on green fields just within Newchurch Council boundaries, but seriously impacting South Lake and the garden centre opposite, unless parking is restricted and inadequate bus infrastructure and road crossing improved. In view of Plan New Housing, Island Plan under consultation, for the same road in South Lake, traffic restriction is critical. Scrutiny of how this is handled is very much recommended.
Concerned about Ventnor plans by Don Prescott in Ventnor. Over the past 9 months, residents of South Wight in general and Shanklin, Wroxall, Whitwell, Knighton, St Lawrence, Ventnor and Bonchurch in particular have suffered a huge number of landslips and rock falls never before experienced. As a result, the Isle of Wight Council introduced measures designed to keep us all as safe as possible by closing many footpaths and very important roads. Local residents, for the most part, have borne these measures with stoicism and resilience, even though many were experiencing the anxiety and mental health issues that can stem from being cut off from their friends and neighbours. Local shops and small businesses were going through a torrid time, especially those in Ventnor Town Centre and Shanklin Old Village. At a public meeting, Councillor Ed Blake, who I've known since he was a young boy, referred to us as being 8,000 people clinging to a rock. In tandem with Councillor Rodney Downer and David Grucock, Councillor Blake made efforts to get some roads reopened when it was deemed safe to do so, which has now happened with Leeson Road, albeit temporarily. Colin Rowlands, Isle of Wight Director of Communities, said at a public meeting, "We are trying to have conversations with utilities to proactively manage the interventions that need to take place in Ventnor. The similar message we have given to Island Roads is, unless essential, you don't come into Ventnor." Similar opinions were voiced by Councillor Phil Jordan, who said, "The whole area is prone to movement and has done so over thousands of years, and no doubt will continue to do so in the future." And Natasha Dix said, "Ground movements across the wider area of Ventnor are a concern. Yet despite such statements, residents are now being asked to comment upon a planning application at Flowers Brook, 24/01040/RVC, which seeks to do exactly the opposite of what Mr. Rowland suggested. That is, to come into Ventnor and to start non-essential excavations and land disturbances, with the ensuing massive increase of HGV movements for soil disposal on roads that are already either closed or suffering great damage. Zigzag Road in particular, with increased traffic. I shall be addressing this matter further with the Planning Committee, as this cannot possibly be decided under delegated powers."
Labour needs to show it is different from Hans Bromwich of cows. It is hugely disappointing that Labour have rolled back on pursuing those who fraudulently acquired billions of pounds of taxpayers' money during the pandemic. Many will consider reneging on this promise tantamount to condoning or passively enabling fraud. Prosecutions, along with reclaiming this money either directly or via the seizure of assets, could be used to help settle the Windrush, Waspy women and infected blood victims' claims. As for the post office scandal, government could easily insist that Fujitsu pays victims £100,000 each immediately, with the balance for those entitled to more to follow. Our new Labour government needs to show it's different from those who for years have simply kicked injustices into the long grass. It shouldn't pussyfoot around. All they need to do is to make it clear to Fujitsu that if they don't immediately comply, then they can whistle when it comes to being awarded any future government contracts. The Americans didn't mess about when they made BP pay billions for the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Equally important, if not more so, Labour needs to urgently address increasing levels of poverty affecting many in full-time work. Public sector workers are asking for an above-inflation pay settlement of 5%. Surely it's time to recognise blanket percentage wage rises are fundamentally flawed. They have been largely responsible for driving a growing gap between the richest and poorest in society. 5% for someone on an annual salary of £25,000 is £1,250. For someone earning £100,000 per annum, it represents £5,000. This nonsense has been going on for years and years. Little wonder those on the lowest salaries are increasingly finding it impossible to live, let alone bring up a family, and we then wonder why the likes of junior doctors are deciding to move abroad. If we blindly continue with blanket percentage pay rises, we are simply building up trouble for the future. Far better to introduce a sliding scale, say 10% for those on 25,000, with 2.5% for those earning 100,000, pegged at a maximum of 2,500 for those earning above 100,000. Our country is crying out for change. Labour needs to show they are different. They need to show they are going to address some of the obscene inequalities in our society. Otherwise, what's their point? Many voters will simply see them as the Conservative Party, rebranded under a different name.
Goodbye from Mary.
And it's goodbye from John.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, today on the programme, some promising news on the sight-saving front, some of it related to how modern technology can identify a developing eye condition more quickly.
At the moment, once you take a scan or you do a test on a patient, you need a very high level of expertise to interpret that right. And that expertise is often locked away in individual hospital eye departments. And what AI algorithms would allow us to do, essentially, is to have really high quality interpretations of those scans the instant they're taken.
But first, a discovery directly related to the eye condition glaucoma. Glaucoma results in a build-up of pressure behind the eye, which can lead to deterioration in sight. But new research has raised hopes that people who respond less well to treatment can be identified sooner. Well, I'm joined by Professor Ted Garway-Heath of University College London's Institute of Ophthalmology. Ted, first of all, I just gave a very basic overview of the condition. You're the expert. How exactly does glaucoma affect someone's sight?
Glaucoma is a condition in which nerve cells in the eye are damaged, and this results in a loss of vision. It's fairly common, so after the age of 40, about 1 in 100 people are affected, and that rises to 1 in 20 in those aged 80 and over. As you mentioned, the main risk factors are high pressure inside the eye and older age. It usually gets slowly worse, but there's a very wide range of susceptibility. So some people don't get worse at all, even without treatment, whereas others lose vision with normal pressure in the eye and continue to lose vision despite treatment. So we're trying to understand this susceptibility and identify which patients are at greatest risk of vision impairment and blindness.
And you think that you've done that, don't you? Or you've certainly found a factor that seems to be rather crucial in why some people respond less well and continue to lose sight.
We're certainly moving in the right direction. So mitochondrial function has emerged as a potential susceptibility factor. Now, mitochondria are the elements inside cells which produce the energy for cells to function, so like little batteries. The nerve cells at the back of the eye require a lot of energy. So we and others have reasoned that these nerve cells might be sensitive to how well the mitochondria are functioning. So in the study we've just published, we were asking the question, how important is mitochondrial function in glaucoma progression? So we were able to measure the function of these mitochondria in white blood cells and found that it was lower in people with glaucoma and lowest in those who developed glaucoma with eye pressure in the normal range. And we've also found that the rate of vision loss in patients with glaucoma was correlated to that mitochondrial function. The association was quite strong, not quite as strong as with the eye pressure, but nearly as great.
So what will that enable you to do?
Potentially, this will help us identify which patients in the clinic need greatest attention. So at the moment, we tend to see all patients with a similar interval of follow-up and treatments, whereas taking this new information into account, if it develops as a clinical test, we would be able to then say which patients need closer follow-up and which patients need more treatment, more pressure-lowering treatment.
Now, I gather there is a vitamin that you're testing that also might have a positive effect in treatment. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, one of the other findings in our study was that there was a molecule called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD for short, which was also low. This molecule is important for proper mitochondrial function. And we found that it was correlated both with the function of mitochondria, and it was low in the patients that had glaucoma. That molecule is made from vitamin B3 in the diet. So this has led us to ask the question, if we supplement the diet with high doses of vitamin B3, can we slow glaucoma progression? And is that mediated through the mitochondrial function? So in the trial, we'll also be measuring how well the mitochondria are working. Clinical trials take time, though, so we won't get the answer for 4 years. So I'm afraid listeners with glaucoma will need to be patient and await the results of the trial before we can say with any certainty whether or not high-dose vitamin B3 is a good thing or not.
Of course, people hearing this sort of thing are always interested in, well, if there are trials, can I be part of it? Are you still looking for people to participate? And if so, what kind of people do you need?
We are. We've got about another year to run recruiting participants. So what I would say to your listeners is that if you've been diagnosed with glaucoma within the last 12 months and are interested in participating in the trial, please ask your eye doctor if they're one of the participating centres in the naming trial, which is the name of the trial. There are 10 centres across England and Northern Ireland.
Professor Ted Galway-Heath, thank you very much indeed. Now, we've always been careful on this programme not to raise false hopes about eye treatment before we're sure of our facts, but occasionally it's irresistible to take a peek into the future, and particularly now that developments in areas like AI, artificial intelligence, are so rapid, it's almost impossible to ignore its implications. Well, I've been talking to Pete Thomas. He's Executive Director of Digital Development at Moorfields Eye Hospital. He's been telling me about the application of AI, which is already having an effect on the rate of diagnosis of eye conditions, and therefore, by implication, the speed with which they can be treated.
The really exciting thing at the moment is that the whole AI field is moving on at an incredible pace. At the moment, once you take a scan or you do a test on a patient, you need a very high level of expertise to interpret that right. And that expertise is often locked away in individual hospital eye departments. So we see, for example, vast numbers of OCT scans. So that's one of our workhorse types of scanners. An OCT scanner, we use it for many of the conditions of the retina. That's present in many high street optometry practices. But the really in-depth medical retina, we would call it, knowledge to interpret some of those scans is locked away in hospitals. And what AI algorithms would allow us to do essentially is to have really high quality interpretations of those scans the instant they're taken in, for example, an optometry practice on the high street or an imaging hub, which could be set up on a retail park somewhere. It essentially means that you don't have this bottleneck between all the scans you've got and then the ability of expert clinicians to analyse them. You've got the ability maybe to do the analysis instantly on the same machine that the scan's been taken, and that might mean that a patient can be reassured straight away. Because many times we find an abnormal scan that's not actually medically relevant. A lot of those patients then have a stressful time coming into hospital, having appointments only to be told that everything's okay. If we're able to tell them they're okay the second they have that scan taken in their optometrist practice, well, that is a lot better journey for the patient, but also takes a lot of the pressure off the health service, off the NHS, meaning that there's more appointments for the patients who really need it.
Yeah, that was my point in a way. If you're not okay, what happens then? What would happen in the future that doesn't happen now?
So I think it allows us to move to a way more rapid access model of treatment. So if we're able to come up with pretty much a definitive diagnosis anywhere that we can put a scanner, and these scanners are getting quite low cost now, that means that we can immediately link the patient up with the care they need. So obviously it's a great outcome if they don't need any care, but if we're able to immediately get them to a one-stop clinic where they can have their diagnosis confirmed, they can be consented for whatever treatment they need, and maybe even receive that treatment on the same day, it allows us hugely to streamline the care pathway. It essentially will hopefully allow us to remove many steps so that we can go straight from having a scan outside of hospital straight into a clinical service that can start treatment much more quickly. So I think that's mainly what we're going to see.
We looked at one a little while ago, specifically with a form of macular degeneration. I mean, is this happening with a lot of different conditions? Are there certain conditions that lend themselves to this kind of quick diagnosis treatment, or can you do it with almost anything?
You can probably do it with pretty much anything. I mean, the interesting thing about the eye is that you can see it in microscopic detail. So, in this room we're in, we've got one of our slit lamps, which is a microscope we use to examine patients. And that lets us see the eye in microscopic detail. And we have scanners that can look at many parts of the eye in that level of detail. So we're a very visual specialty, which means most of the time we can diagnose pretty much any disease of the eye based on appearance, plus a couple of tests. So macular degeneration has been a big early target because it's such a prevalent disease and it's got such severe consequences. But absolutely, people are looking at this with glaucoma, looking at how they can make cataracts pathways smoother, even right down to looking at, rarer diseases like retinopathy of prematurity that affects very premature babies. There's lots of people working on AI there because the skills to actually examine a small baby for ROP, for retinopathy of prematurity, are pretty rare. So it's the case across virtually every clinical condition you can imagine that people are trying to work on AI, sometimes very successfully.
Of course, it's all very well being able to diagnose it very quickly, but it's no good being able to diagnose it quickly if you can't treat it quickly. The more people you actually diagnose, you're going to have a problem, aren't you, with beds, doctors, enough people to treat it and enough places to treat it in?
Potentially. I think what we normally see is that, so if you're taking a condition like macular degeneration, pretty much everybody who you're going to see for macular degeneration, you're going to see at some point. Let's suppose the diagnosis doesn't happen at an early appointment. Chances are we are going to pick it up later in the disease condition, and that still means we're going to be seeing that patient, and potentially it means that we're going to need to treat them for a much longer period of time with many more interventions. With a lot of our diseases, if we can pick it up very early, sometimes we can get control of it very early as well. So there is a risk whenever you get into this, a much better ability to detect disease, you'll end up with more patients. But my feeling is our clinics are going to have fewer patients who don't need to be there, because those ones who don't need to come in don't need to be reviewed. And those patients who do need to be there, I think we would see them anyway, but hopefully we'll see them much earlier and get on with the treatment really early. The interesting thing, and what some of my colleagues are coming up with at the moment, is this field called oculomics, which is, the idea that the eye can be a window to many other conditions affecting the body. And we're beginning to find evidence that you can detect other diseases from OCT. So a colleague of mine, Siegfried Wagner, and team recently published a paper showing that you can possibly detect Parkinson's disease 7 years before it's clinically apparent using a scan of the eye. And you can only do that with AI. A human can't do that. So for those ones, maybe the impact's going to be a little less clear. We may start picking up many non-eye conditions very early, and some of those could have a big impact on capacity.
Could AI have other effects? I mean, we're talking about detection here, but what about actual treatment? Has AI got a relevance there?
I think it can hopefully help us to target treatment better. So for many conditions, we have many different options of what we might treat that patient with. And hopefully through AI, one of the things you can imagine is it helps us to tailor the treatment to the individual patient much better. So I think it could help us to, select treatments in that way. In terms of providing a physical intervention like surgery, there's lots of advances at the moment around robotic surgery, for example. Now, if you play that forwards a very long time, you could imagine a robot autonomously operating on an eye. And there's no question that robot's going to be using AI to do it. They're going to be using AI to understand what they're looking at, AI to control their limbs and control their instruments. That's probably on a slightly longer time scale.
Pete Thomas. That's it for today. As always, we welcome your comments, your questions, your ideas. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings. Goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing the 26th of July 2024. Newport area. Oggie's Chip Shop, 2 to 3 St Thomas's Square. French Franks, 13 St Thomas's Square. 67A High Street. 130 to 132 Stainless Games High Street. Andrew Ross, 28 Holyrood Street. On pavement outside JD Sports, 110 to 112 High Street. Guildhall, right hand side High Street. 71 to 74 Crocker Street. 32B Caesars Road.
Ride area, pavement outside 29 to 30 Cross Street, outside Artisan Union Street, 17 Cross Street, 21 Nelson Place, 60 Union Street, 4A and 4B Pier Street, Seaview, St Leonard's, 1 Pier Road, Seaview. Ride area skips: The Lodge, Ferry Road, Seaview, Schoolhouse Barns, Seaview High Street, Seaview, and 4 Well Street.
Ventnor area: 2 East Street, Co-op, Pier Street, Mary Laters / Elmer Esplanade, 1 Sydenham House, Hamborough House, 28 High Street, Ventnor Fire Station, 19 South, 38 High Street. 152 High Street, Ventnor area skips: Ventnor Fire Street, 19 South.
Shanklin area: The Crab Inn, 94 High Street, 112 Regent Street, and 1A Atherley Cross Road.
Cowes area: 1 Beckford Road, Fatface High Street, 1 Birmingham Road.
East Cowes area skips: 32 Oakfield Road.